There's a quiet kind of strength that never really gets celebrated. It's not glamorous. It's not loud. It doesn't really post updates, but it's there. It's there in the person who walks into a room with a smile that no one knows it took years to rebuild. It's in the one who shows up calm today after drowning in storms that no one really saw. It's in the one who's healing without witnesses, without applause, without any acknowledgement. That kind of strength really changes lives, I believe. But there's no one around to clap for it. See, we live in a world that rewards the loudest story, the flashiest transformation, the most dramatic glow up. If pain can't be packaged into a TikTok or paraded on a podcast, people don't really know what to do with it. And if healing isn't public, it's almost as if it doesn't count. But what about the ones who are healing in silence, though? The ones who never made an announcement, the ones who weren't trying to prove anything, and the ones who just didn't want to hurt anymore. This episode is for them. Because somewhere along the way, we started believing that healing needs an audience, and that self-discovery, it only matters if it's seen, and that becoming better only has value when others notice it. And quietly, those of us doing the inner work without any fanfare, without any spectacle, started to feel like we were the ones who were falling behind. Not because we weren't growing, but because no one was clapping. But let's pause on that for a moment. What does it do to the soul to keep rising and be met with silence? To carry the weight of old wounds and do the labor of untangling them and then return to a world that moves on like nothing happened. See, that's the quiet grief of healing that happens in secret. It's not just about growth, it's about how lonely it feels to grow when no one sees it. To go to therapy while your friends are partying, to say no to drama while others post about it for clout, to face your demons while others are distracting themselves louder. See, there's no highlight reel for internal breakthroughs. There's no Instagrams for the story of the moment where you finally stop blaming yourself, right? There's no viral trend for learning how to self-soothe instead of self-destructing. And yet, those are the real revolutions. But if you've ever looked around and wondered why your pain gets processed in silence while others get praise for performative change, I don't think you're imagining things. There's a cultural bias towards visibility. And so we confuse loud with true. And we mistake visibility for value. And when you're healing in secret, that bias cuts deep. And so you begin to wonder, does it even matter that I've even grown? Am I actually changing if no one sees it? And why does it feel like I'm doing all this work for nothing? But here's the thing that culture won't tell you, and that's this. Not all sacred things are seen. And not all transformation needs to be televised. See, some healing is a slow unfurling. Some change is actually meant to be private. And some growth happens in dark for a reason. I mean, think of a seed that's under the soil. It does its best work when no one's watching. But that doesn't mean it's not becoming something powerful, right? It's just that some of us were never meant to bloom on a stage. Some of us were, or we're actually learning how to grow in these hidden gardens, and that doesn't make us weak. It just makes us honest. And still, the ache, the pain is real. Even when we believe in the work that we're doing, even when we trust the process, even when we know that our reasons for doing this are in the right place, there's still this part of us that longs to be seen, right? Not necessarily for ego or attention, but just to feel like we matter, just to feel like someone notices the effort it takes to keep growing and to keep showing up, to not shut down, to not lash out, to not give up. And it's exhausting to evolve quietly in a culture that's addicted to noise. And it can make the quiet path feel so much like the wrong one sometimes. And maybe that's the illusion there. Maybe the silence isn't proof that we're off course. Maybe it's just proof that we're doing something real. But let's name something that doesn't get talked about enough. Visibility is a privilege. See, not everyone can live loud. Some of us come from families that punish vulnerability. And some of us, we grew up in homes where silence was survival. Some of us still have trauma that taught us to keep everything hidden and guarded and private. So when people say things like, just speak your truth or put yourself out there, it lands a little different, doesn't it? Because for some of us, expressiveness is a risk. It's not always safe to share the truth in environments that don't know how to hold it. And so we learn how to hold behind closed doors, not out of shame as much as more so out of necessity. Not out of weakness, but more so out of wisdom. But this creates a tension, doesn't it? Because while others are being celebrated for the same kind of growth, well, here we are learning how to be okay with no one noticing it. So we're building new boundaries alone, and we're shedding old identities alone. And we're grieving the things that never had space to be grieved alone. And it's not performative, it's not curated, it's real and raw and sacred work. But it can still feel like we're being left behind. Because social media is not made for nuance, is it? Social media is more about spectacle. People who live out their breakups or transformations or spiritual awakenings and therapy and breakthroughs in real time that are often rewarded. And those of us who are doing the same work privately, well, we watch in silence. Sometimes we cheer, and sometimes it feels painful. Sometimes it's both. See, there's an invisible kind of grief in private healing, and that's the absence of witness. Humans are weird for community, aren't we? Like, we are wired for it. We are built to be in connection, and yet many of us are forced to do the heaviest of lifting alone. And it's not by choice as much as it is more so by circumstance. We're the ones who never had people ask, what's going on behind your smile, right? We're the ones who weren't dramatic enough to be noticed. We're the ones who weren't messy enough to be called in. We're the ones who kept it all together until we couldn't. And now we're the ones who are choosing to do the work anyway. See, that's integrity that no one is really clapping for. To heal when no one's watching, or to change when no one believes that you can, or to grow when the world keeps you in this box. It's quiet and it's unglamorous and unnoticed, but it's the real revolution. And still, some days are harder than others. Some days we wonder, what's the point if no one sees me, right? Or why do we keep becoming someone better if the world still treats us like who we were once? Why do we keep showing up when we still feel invisible? See, these are the questions that are often invalidated but are really quite valid, because being unseen for who we're becoming can feel a little bit like we're being erased. And if all the efforts and all the pain and all the hard-earned progress evaporates without a witness, that's painful, right? But perhaps the healing isn't lost, though, just because it's quiet. Maybe the integrity of our process is exactly what gives it strength. See, some things are stronger because they were never performed. Some growth lasts because it was never really curated. Maybe the absence of attention is what lets our roots grow even deeper. And perhaps we're not just as alone as we think we are. Because for every loud transformation that's being posted, I would say there are thousands of quiet ones that are unfolding as well. So maybe this is what real community is. This secret network of people who are healing in the shadows, who are choosing growth over spectacle, who are choosing integrity over applause. See, we don't know each other's names per se in this community, but we are in this together. And that's something worth holding on to. See, there's something really precious about the transformation that no one sees, where there's no filters, there's no timelines, there's no expectation to narrate our growth in real time. It's just this quiet return to ourselves, this steady rebuilding of trust with our own soul. The kind of healing that happens when we finally stop performing and start listening. But the world doesn't really know what to do with that quiet healing, does it? Because it doesn't really create any content. It doesn't produce a brand. It doesn't really become trendy or viral. And that's where a lot of the loneliness comes in. It's when healing becomes like this public commodity, or when private growth feels like failure. But let's name this lie, shall we? Visibility is not the same as value. Being seen is not proof that the healing is real. And being unseen is not proof that it isn't. Some of the most profound healing, it unfolds in silence. And the parent who is breaking generational trauma without a support system is worthwhile attending to. The person in recovery who is staying sober even when no one's cheering them on. The survivor who is rebuilding a sense of safety inside their own skin quietly day by day. Totally noteworthy, right? But none of that shows up on a timeline. But those commitments and investments change everything for these individuals. And yet the pain can still be real. When people live loud about their breakthroughs, I mean, it can trigger some fairly deep insecurities in us. Are they further ahead than I am? Or am I healing in the wrong way, perhaps? Or why does it look like it's so easy for them and so hard for me, right? But here's what those polished updates don't really show. Let's listen in here. Those updates don't show the nights that those people could not stop crying. They don't show the therapy appointments that left them raw. Those polished updates don't show the relationships that collapsed under the weight of their truth. See, public healing often leaves out the blood and the private healing that bleeds and does so quietly. And neither one is better or worse, But I'd say one is harder to sustain without acknowledgement, right? Which brings me to something fairly crucial at this point. Being uncelebrated does not mean you're unworthy. That might sound simple, but I think it cuts deep because so many of us, we were raised to believe that love is earned through performance, that we're only worthy when we are exceptional. We're only valuable when we are admired. And so when healing doesn't come with praise, I think it's then that we start to wonder if it really matters. But what if our healing is not meant to be impressive? What if our healing instead is just meant to be true? See, true healing does not require a spotlight. True healing requires courage. Courage to sit with the mess. Courage to unlearn the lies. Courage to choose softness in a world that rewards hardness. That's the work. And it counts. Even when no one's clapping. Especially when no one's clapping. So, to the ones who are healing in secret, I see you. I see how hard it is to keep going when no one notices. I see how painful it is to feel invisible in your transformation. I see how lonely it is to carry the weight of becoming with no one to witness it. But I also see the beauty in this too, because you're not doing this for likes. You're not doing this for validation. You're actually doing this for freedom. And that kind of healing is the kind I believe that lasts. So you're not falling behind. You're building something that's unshakable. So let that be your anchor on the days that it feels like no one cares. Because some of us aren't meant to live loud. We're meant to live real. And that's more than enough. See, there's a kind of beauty in private healing that most people will never really understand because the world teaches us to measure our progress by applause. But healing is not a performance. It's a relationship with truth, your truth. And the most intimate parts of that relationship are actually forged in silence. It's when we finally start being honest with ourselves, not to prove anything or not to earn anything, but simply because we're tired of pretending. So we're now stepping into something sacred. This is what many of us, I think, forget. Healing is not always about transformation. Sometimes it's just about returning. Returning to the parts of ourselves that we were told were too much. To the softness that we were shamed out of, right? Or to the truth that we buried just so that we could survive. And when we begin returning to ourselves, slowly and gently and consistently, we're building a home inside of our own body. Not a showcase, but not a resume, but just this place of refuge. And here's the tension point. We don't just want to heal, we also want to be seen while we're healing, right? We want our transformation to be known, to be respected, to be understood. And that's not vanity. That's human. See, we long to be witnessed because so much of our pain came from being overlooked or being dismissed or being misunderstood in the first place. But some of the most profound healing journeys will never be recognized by those we hoped would notice. And that's one of the final heartbreaks, I think, of healing. Realizing that the people who hurt us may never get around to validating our growth. And the people who love us now, well, they may never fully understand what it costs. So what then? Well, we stop waiting for the parade and we start choosing a path of integrity. We stop measuring our healing by what others are affirming. And instead, we start listening to what our body and our soul, our spirit already knows. And that is that we're coming home to ourselves. And that we don't need a spotlight to belong here. Because the point of healing is not to prove that we're okay. The point of healing is to live in a way that honors our truth, even when no one's clapping. And that's where true intimacy starts. Not just in romantic relationships, but also in our friendships, in our families, and even in our communities. Real intimacy is not built on performance. It's actually built on being present in that moment. And if we can show up in our relationships the same way that we show up in our quiet healing, without any pretense, without the need to impress, without the showcasing, just so that we can be real and honest and open, it's then that we begin to build something so much deeper than recognition. What we're building is belonging. Because the truth is, we're not as alone as we think we are. There are others who are also healing in silence as well. Others who are walking their own lonely path back to themselves. Others who are whispering to the dark, keep going, it's working. Even if no one sees it yet, you're on the right path. And perhaps when we live from that place of quiet courage, we can become a lighthouse for someone else who's still lost in this fog. It's then that we become proof that unseen healing is still powerful, that uncelebrated growth is still real, and that integrity and intimacy matter far more than image and applause. So, my dear listener, here's the invitation in this episode. Let's keep healing, even when it's quiet, even when it's lonely, even when it's thankless. Let's keep healing, not for the world to see, but for the kind of life that we're finally pursuing, and that's where we experience freedom to live and express. That's what makes it real, and that's what makes it worthwhile. Let me know in the comments how this episode landed for you, and if there's any other thoughts that I didn't really cover that would be pertinent to this conversation. I'll see you in the next episode.